it's hard to have a discussion about digital tech in 2023 without mentioning AI.
I think last year was definitely the year that it sort of exploded with ChatGPT and integrated into Bing and things like that. And I think that's exciting times. I was smiling when you mentioned it because I was actually signing a leaving card yesterday. One of my colleagues is leaving online. And the point where you write the message in, there was a button saying, "Would you like help of AI?" To write a message to my colleague, and right, but seriously, I can come up with 2 or 3 sentences that mean something as opposed to AI writing that. And you think it's just taken over everywhere. But coming back to construction, I think it does 2 things really, really well. I think one thing, it takes unstructured information and puts it into a structure.
Yeah.
So you could have something like a 30-page PDF and you want to have some key information out of it. Like traditionally, you'd give that to a colleague or yourself and you'd go through every page of the PDF and you'd summarize it. I think the ability to put unstructured information into a structure it's incredible with AI.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Smarter Building podcast powered by Symmetry, where we talk all things construction and its ever-evolving digital landscape. To kick off 2024, we're joined today by Dr. Stephen Hamil, Innovation Director at MBS, which is the market-leading platform used by architects and engineers to write their construction specifications. So welcome, Stephen.
Hi.
Great to have you. And in addition to your role at MBS, I've seen that you're quite the expert in BIM, digital construction and specifications, and you actually also have a background in structural engineering and even a PhD in the digital modelling of building structures. So maybe sort of just touching on your experience, can you share how you feel this has helped you in your career today and provide our listeners with a bit on your professional background?
Yeah, I think I probably stayed at university too long. Because I did my first degree in structural engineering and then I enjoyed the university lifestyle, doing research, enjoying the sort of like playing football for the university and things. So I stayed on and did a PhD in the digital modelling of reinforced concrete structures. Mm-hmm. And that was, I guess, what shaped my career really, because it was a mix of construction industry, so designing reinforced concrete joints, but then digitally modeling that on computers at a really exciting time when the internet was just evolving. It was the days of Alta Vista Search and Microsoft had just released Microsoft Office and coding languages were coming out. And it was, I guess, that which then positioned me when I joined MBS back in 1999 to have that mix of construction industry and creating software solutions for the industry.
Excellent. And we also can see that you're quite a regular speaker at many different industry events. So you're sort of well exposed to the industry from many different angles. What about how has this sort of combined with your role now at MBS?
Yeah, so when I first joined MBS, I was a software developer. I was working on our old product spec man and scheduler and writing code. But I think the thing I enjoyed most was sort of listening to what the customers wanted, customer requirements. And I quite like showing things off as well, like getting in front of customers with the laptop or the screen. So my sort of career developed into more of a sort of customer-facing role. So I sort of get out there in the industry, listen to what our customers want, try to feed that back into the product development process, and then support the sales team, support the marketing team in terms of getting the messages out there. So yeah, really enjoyable. And it mixes quite varied each week.
And before we sort of get too much into your professional background, I can see you've got some interesting things behind you on the wall there. Could you just tell us a bit about more about that?
Well, number one, I'm a rubbish guitar player, so we'll push that to one side. But on the other side, I really enjoy running. The last 7 or 8 years, been a member of a running club, and for the last 3 years, I've tried to do one marathon each year. So I think that's Edinburgh Marathon number and medal on the wall behind me there.
And any more for this year that you're planning?
Yes, I'm training hard at the moment. I'm doing Manchester in April, so hoping for a good time. Just crossing my fingers the weather's going to be good, because without offending anyone from the Northwest, it always seems to be raining and windy when I go to the Northwest.
It wouldn't be the same if it wasn't. So then going back to MBS, just for those that may not know about it, what specific services and solutions does MBS provide to the construction and manufacturing sectors, and how do they address industry challenges?
Yeah, so we've grown over the years. NBS originally stood for the National Building Specification, and that was an initiative from the Royal Institute of British Architects back in the 70s. So to help architects at the time write robust, up-to-date construction specifications to get a better quality building for their clients. In terms of the NBS business, though, it's grown. It's gone from paper to digital, all in the cloud now. And a big part of our business is now on the construction manufacturer side. So where manufacturers want to have their product specified, they can appear in the MBS system with well-structured data. In recent years, we've gone from being fully owned by the Royal Institute of British Architects to now being part of a worldwide group. It's called Byggfakta Group. And my role actually has a third business. So we've got the MBS Chorus specification, NBS source manufacturers. We also have Glenigan, based down in the south in Bournemouth. And Glenigan tries to model every single project that's underway in the United Kingdom. So 580,000 projects in the database, allowing contractors, subcontractors, manufacturers to research what's out there and win business.
So why is it sort of important for construction companies to have better access to this sort of product information and link building models to these specification models?
I think the better information, it just makes you more efficient, number one, and it lowers the risk of things going wrong on a project. If you're working with bad information, you specify the wrong product or you specify execution to the wrong standard and things go wrong, I think someone's got to put it right. And that could be a minor stress and something you put right easily, or something that could go to court and go on your PI insurance, or like somebody's got to pay for things that go wrong. So if you can document your requirements robustly, correctly, clearly, using the latest information, it's going to reduce the risk of a bad project. I think that's the fundamental reason why NBS has existed for over 50 years. It helps construction projects go smoothly.
So in a highly fragmented industry like construction, how do you sort of get this data connected from design, supply, and construction of the built environment? How are you seeing these industries sort of collaborating?
Yeah, so I think there's a technology challenge, and then there's also a sort of like behavior, attitude, willing, a collaborative challenge there as well. So from a technology challenge, fundamentally, you've got to have a classification structure that allows you to link information to the right place. So at MBS, we published the Uniclass classification system. So, for example, clay brick has a classification code. And against that classification code, we can put our template specification, our guidance, our links to our standards. We will work with manufacturers, 10 clay brick manufacturers, and position their products against it as well. So you've got lots of clever technology behind the scenes, but fundamentally, it's a bit like going into the library and knowing where to find the book, because they've got what's it called, the Dewey Decimal System. It's similar with construction information. And by having that as a sort of national standard, it means as teams come together and work on a project, lots of different design consultants, client, cost consultant, contractor, etc., you don't have to spend the first 2 or 3 weeks talking about how you're going to structure your information. It's the same on every project. So I think that's the first challenge and how we try and solve it. And then I think the second one's around collaboration. And that's primarily how well I think the lead designer works with the client and the other consultants, which is typically an architect working with building service engineers, structural engineers, to coordinate that design, agree design responsibilities, work out what technology platforms you're going to use. And then probably most importantly, as you go into the construction phase, how you work with the main contractor and subcontractors to make sure you get a successful end product for the client. And I think too long that second part has been done in silos, everybody going away and doing their own thing. And if the information's not connected, you get contradictions and requests for information and people holding on for things for too long and just sharing things as PDFs as opposed to rich data. And I think if you can hit both of those things, get all of the technology and the information sorted and have that sort of can-do collaborative attitude with the right behaviors, you can really have efficient projects with minimal risk.
I guess this sort of leads on to a bit of the BIM piece. So as at MBS, you guys produced this digital construction report. And one of the quotes that we've pulled out from there, BIM means different things to different people. Could you explain the findings from this and how you have seen technology and BIM maybe transform the construction industry, or how it maybe can help with this collaboration in the future?
Yeah, so I think for me, BIM it's around using well-structured digital information in a defined process to sort of design and build and ultimately operate efficiently. But it's because it's such a nice little buzzword, which had a lot of support from government back 2011. Everyone's maybe thinks something slightly different. It's that picture of the elephant where somebody's touching the leg, someone's touching the nose. They're all touching the elephant, but and when we do our survey, we ask people, like, how do you define BIM? And it tends to be split into three categories. A lot of the industry just sees it as people using Revit or AutoCAD to coordinate drawings and 3D models. A lot of the industry still see it as the original level 2 BIM in the past 1192 standards, which define the process, which I think is probably the most important thing, getting that process right, and tools like Revit and NBS, etc., common data environments help. And then the other third, I think, define it as it's very similar, but the ISO 19650 suite of standards, which replaced the old level 2, which was the initial sort of BIM journey.
Yeah. And then also leading on to building safety, that's always quite a key topic for us on the show. We can see that you've got quite a lot of experience in BIM and have even contributed to some chapters for government and international guides to BIM level 2 and the Golden Thread. Could you just tell us a bit more about that and what was involved?
So, going back to, I think it was around sort of 2011 to 12, and it was Mark Bew, who was the sort of industry lead that was working with government, with Paul Morrell, who was the construction advisor at the time. I think it was Francis Moore, the government minister. They got funding for a BIM program where they'd educate the industry, they'd develop standards and try and, by using the power government has, the money they spend on schools and hospitals and offices and things across the country, if they say this is the way you should do building projects, then the industry will follow, the private sector will follow and hopefully accelerate ahead of the public sector, etc. So that was where the journey started. And I guess ultimately, when you say we must do BIM, then you've got to define what you mean by BIM. And I think at the time they had sort of 8 different pillars to what the BIM initiative was. And that was things like the past 1192 standard, Part 2, Part 3, Part 5, etc. And the MBS role there is we won what was called the BIM Toolkit project, and that was to do 2 of those 8 pillars of BIM. And one was to define how a digital plan of work works. So forget about BIM as a 3D model. What about that process through the plan of work, all the information you're developing? And the other part of BIM Toolkit was to develop a unified classification system that covered all of the disciplines in the building sector and the infrastructure sector. So it was quite a huge project. It was £1 million worth of funding. We worked very closely with BDP, Mark McDonald and Anna O'Rourke, who were part of our team. And we also worked very closely with the Royal Institute of British Architects, who redeveloped their plan of work, which I think was 4 years in the making, maybe even 50 years in the making, which used to be stage A, stage B, stage C, and they changed it to the new sort of digital plan of work stages, stage 0, 1, 2, 3. So 2's concept design, 4's technical design, etc. So yeah, we did a lot of work on the digital plan of work side, working also with the RIB on their new plan of work and guidance and pushing that out to industry. And we did a huge amount of work on the classification side, where now Uniclass has got a fantastic website. It's got 12 or 13 tables, and it pretty much covers all of the major things that go into the built environment. So there's tables for products, things like boilers and bricks. There's table for spaces like classrooms, assembly halls, car parks. There's tables for all the different building types and bridges and tunnels and all the different roles as well. So the Uniclass has been a real big success, and it's what we use at MBS to define all of our information as well. So I'd like to think that that sort of whole picture is what sort of BIM is, managing that information development through the timeline. What does it mean in terms of building safety? I think that's been defined really well in that new Building Safety Act, which has come out, and this, in particular, the secondary legislation that came out later in the year in 2023. But I think in terms of the Building Safety Act, it sort of splits into two types of projects. You've got your normal projects and you've got your higher risk buildings, the ones that are residential of a certain height. The principles apply to both project types. That, like, fundamentally, you've got a principal designer, probably the architect, a principal contractor, and the client. And before you build something, you sign off all of the stuff that you're going to build and say, in my professional competency, this meets the approved documents, the building regs, in terms of building safety. So things like public health, falling from height, building structure, fire safety. And then you make sure that what's been designed beforehand gets built, and everything's signed off at the end by the principal designer, the principal contractor, and you're doing what you said you were going to do. Accepting there's going to be some changes, and when there is a change, it's probably signed off and recorded. The difference between your typical project and your higher risk project is, for the higher risk project, the building regulator will put a team monitoring this, and that information that's getting signed off, has change notification, I guess signed off right at the end, and then through the building's life, that's what gets called the golden thread. And on the golden thread will be specifications, drawings, Word documents, Excel files, which prove that what's getting done meets the rules. And like, how does BIM help that? Well, BIM is absolutely fundamental to that, because it is around information modeling of buildings. It's the three initials. So yeah, use all of the BIM processes to do the things that people should always have been done. Like in the 80s, should you be signing off what you're about to build? Yes. Should you be recording changes? Yes. Should you sign off before people go and live in it? Yes. And it's a shame that it's needed almost. It's just reinforcing doing things properly.
Yeah, I think a key thing you said there is it's something that should have always been done anyway. We've been speaking with Dame Judith Hackett on the podcast. We've had her at a couple of our events as well, and that's sort of the key thing. She's always said it's just stuff that should have been being done. And I think, like you said, BIM is probably the fundamental for that, around managing the information and recording all of that. Those processes are only just going to sort of help us in the future, to be honest. So it's sort of, we're seeing a bit of a shift in BIM, I think, aren't we? And then in terms of that, what do you foresee as sort of common challenges coming up for the industry surrounding that sort of thing? Do you think there's going to be people struggling to adjust, or do you think it's sort of going to be easier now because it's like, okay, we already know those processes, let's just adapt it slightly for this?
Yeah, I think I do a lot of customer calls, either on Teams or visiting offices and things like that. And the two topics that come up every time, and this is whether you're speaking to an architect or an engineer or a manufacturer, it's always Building Safety Act and it's always sustainability. They're the big topics at the moment. And then underneath that is how can digital help us meet these challenges? So if you just pick one from building safety, it's how do you really do revisions well? So as things do change, how do you highlight what's changed, show who signed it off, whether that's changed to a drawing or a change to a specification or a change to a 3D model. And on the sustainability side, like there's lots of different aspects of sustainability. We might talk about it later, but I think embodied carbon is huge at the moment because it's such a tangible thing that you can measure and sign off. I think the London plan at the moment on sort of larger buildings is asking for life cycle analysis, embodied carbon and things. So there's a real sort of thirst for that information.
Yeah, and then I think going back to some things that were mentioned in the MBS Digital Construction Report, you mentioned like sustainability is coming up quite a lot, but also it's hard to have a discussion about digital tech in 2023 without mentioning AI, artificial intelligence. So as well as sustainability, building safety, what are the sort of key themes and trends you've witnessed throughout, doing these talks at these events and just in general speaking and meeting with clients?
Yeah, I think in recent years, probably cloud computing and AI, I'd probably select as the two biggest ones. I think a good demonstrator of the use of the cloud was when COVID happened and everyone had to, in the click of a finger, work from home, or almost. They're looking back, everyone was in the office, and then 4 or 5 days later, the streets were empty and everyone was sort of working from the bedrooms and things like that. At the time, we had pretty much 100% of our customers using our desktop products, MBS Building and MBS Create, and we just launched MBS Chorus, which is accessible through the cloud collaboratively web browser.
Yeah.
And we were expecting it might take 3 or 4 years to transition all the customers. And at that moment, COVID happened and our support teams were just overwhelmed with customers saying, we need a cloud solution now because we can't ask the desktop from the home. We've got a project on.
Yeah.
And I think within about 10 months, we had over 90% of our customers that had just 100% moved over to the cloud. And it wasn't a reluctant move. They were on the cloud and, oh, wow, I can access this on my iPad and on my desktop. And then I go into work and I've got 2 people working on the specification at the same time. So the cloud computing side sort of revolutionized what we did. And I think there's a lot more we can do there on collaboration. And I think on the AI, I think that's a few years behind. But I think last year was definitely the year that it sort of exploded with ChatGPT and integrated into Bing and things like that. And I think that's exciting times. I was smiling when you mentioned it because I was actually signing a leaving card yesterday. One of my colleagues is leaving online. And the point where you write the message in, there was a button saying, would you like help of AI? To write a message to my colleague, right? But seriously, I can come up with 2 or 3 sentences that mean something as opposed to AI writing that. And you think it's just taken over everywhere. But coming back to construction, I think it does 2 things really, really well. I think one thing, it takes unstructured information and puts it into a structure. Yeah. So you could have something like a 30-page PDF and you want to have some key information out of it. And traditionally, you'd give that to a colleague or yourself, and you'd go through every page of the PDF and you'd summarize it yourself. Could be a PDF, could be a web page, could be... I think the ability to put unstructured information into a structure, it's incredible with AI. And the thing to remember there is if you do it for one document or one web page, you can just as easily do it for 10,000. You can go to bed, wake up the next morning, you probably go for a cup of tea, come back once you made the cup of tea, and the work that previously could have manually taken months is being done. It's like absolutely frightening. And then I think the second thing is probably the unstructured query, where you can just say to the user, ask a question. And it's like having a personal assistant that would come in and help. And I think those two examples are both around information management, which is where we sit, but there's some amazing stuff on generative design, and we can just ask it to draw a picture for you in things. So when you go to construction conferences, it tends to be on the generative design side. Draw me a floor plan, which will be for 300 people with the work. But the bit that excites me the most is the information management side.
And going back to something you touched on a bit on your last answer, around COVID and remote working and how that sort of accelerated, cloud computing. How are you seeing that now? Will there be a bit of a shift or an acceleration in that even more, do you think, for the coming years? Do you think people kind of did that as a quick fix adjustment for COVID, and now looking for even smarter ways of doing things, or do you think that sort of was enough?
Yeah, and I think on the sort of intercompany collaboration side, there's more to come. So whether that's architect working with building service engineer for a main contractor, I think there's a lot more online collaboration that can happen there. I do enjoy going to a physical conference though, where you actually meet people and have a little drink.
Yeah, and it's interesting actually because we went to Digital Construction Week last year, and we actually found that it was probably the biggest change since COVID. We felt that last year it really sort of started to pick up again. So is there any particular events that you're going to or speaking at this year already so far?
Yeah, so I'm doing a roundtable for one of the architectural publications, which is a face-to-face one. I think it's next month or the month after. At MBS this year, we've got at least 2 events. I think we're going to do, that hasn't been announced yet, but I think we're going to do one around the topic of sustainability in the first half of the year. And then we'll do our major conference. Last year we did it at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. Got about 500 people there, which was fantastic. And then generally it's keeping an eye on the events that we see all the time, like Eagle Build, Digital Construction, UK Construction Week. And these work well, things like this as well, where I remember before COVID, I think I did a little sort of discussion podcasty type thing, and I travelled down to London for it. I think it was it with Building Magazine or Construction News. And now you can just bang up a Zoom meeting, and we regularly get over 700-800 people on our webinars. And it's a nice mix between things you can do quickly and they're easy to consume, and then the sort of larger events where you get customers together face to face.
And then I guess it also adds to the whole sustainability piece, which we can sort of go on. I mean, that's obviously quite a big topic for us on the Smart Building podcast. So I guess we can see that MBS sort of helps in this space by providing construction companies with access to more sustainable building products. But sort of what more do you guys do around this space? And what more do you think maybe needs to be done in the industry to tackle sustainability from this aspect?
Yeah, I guess we do 2 things at MBS. I think the first thing is we try and offer good guidance and good template content for specifiers when specifying generically. So if we are specifying things like insulation for better sort of building fabric performance, or things like green roofs or heat pumps or what have you, we will make sure we have the content there and the guidance and the links to the standards. And then we've structured our manufacturer content in a way that there's no excuses for manufacturers not to provide that information now. So every product in our NBS source cloud system, we ask them to say, where does the main material of the product come from? Where's the product manufactured? How much recycled content's in there? What's the guidance for recycling at end of life? What's your embodied carbon? And does it contain any red-list materials, etc.? Every single product and source, we're asking over 1,200 manufacturers now to provide that information. And then where possible, where they've got it, we ask for them to provide evidence as well. And typically, like, it could be things like a forestry commission certificate or what have you, but more and more it's that environmental product declaration
Yes.
sheet. So it's like a manufacturer's had a third party come in and say, yeah, this is the amount of carbon dioxide equivalent that's gone into the manufacture of this product, or the typical usage or end of life based on the following assumptions. And that provides a level playing field for all manufacturers. I've got to say that embodied carbon has to be balanced against things like life cycle as well, because you could have something like a brick, which has got a lot of embodied carbon, but it could last for 400 years, versus a timber sheet, which has got very low embodied carbon, but after 3 years, it hasn't been painted and gets thrown in the skip or burnt in the back garden or what have you.
So how do companies sort of get around that issue? And, you mentioned things like AI are sort of coming more into play, and I guess technology. How can that sort of be leveraged to enhance sustainability efforts within the industry?
Yeah, I think you've got two extremes. One extreme is what we're seeing quite a lot at the moment, where people are doing a lot manually using Excel spreadsheets. So they'll have a sustainability team that says, well, what products have been specified? And then they'll open up Excel, write them all in, and they'll go to the manufacturer website and see what certificate, it's very inefficient. And at the other end, the dream where you've done your design, you've done your specification, you click a button and it says, here's your amount of carbon equivalent that's gone into this building, etc. And we've got to move from the Excel way of working to that sort of single click the button and it tells you what you got. So our journey here at MBS, step one is get the information from the manufacturers, and we're well underway there. Step two is making it easy to report. And then step three is allowing them to do a bit of analysis and optioneering and think it with the model and things like that.
So then where do you see things like off-site construction maybe coming in? I know that was also mentioned in the MBS digital construction report. And obviously with yourself having experience in dealing with both the architecture and engineering side and manufacturing, what are your thoughts on off-site construction, and is this the future? When will it sort of happen?
Yeah, we've done a few good case studies and had good speakers. Langer Road, we've got a big factory, the Explore factory, where they do offsites. So concrete. We did a case study with Top Hats. I think that one of the house builders that does a lot of offsite and assembles the houses on site extremely quickly. And I think where you can put a number of products together as an entire system or an element, you're going to get efficiencies. You're going to get less waste. You're going to be able to calculate things like carbon. You're going to much easier. You're going to reduce health and safety of the actual sort of team that are assembling a building, as opposed to sort of building it in tricky conditions as well. So they're all the advantages. And I think you need probably to be working for a client that's got a steady pipeline of work, because to have the luxury of building things in a factory and then moving it across and assembling it, you've got to have a little bit of a sort of efficiency of scale as well. But where you can get that, it's undoubtedly a more efficient and faster way of constructing where that's possible.
You mentioned you sort of got a few case studies. Is that on customers that have actually sort of done this well, or any sort of advice, tips you could give to future people looking at this?
Yeah, all the case studies you have are people that have done it well. Strangely enough, the customers that have a disaster don't talk about it. But no, the best one recently was definitely at our the case study we've had was at our annual conference last year. Was from a design practice called Bryden Wood. We do architecture services, structure, and a chap called Jamie Johnson. I think it's on our website if people Google it. NBS Bryden Wood, and he's the best speaker I've ever seen talking about sort of modern methods of construction, which encompasses not just offsite, but encompasses offsite construction.
So then, and just going back to, you sort of mentioned that BIM might sort of be not coming up again, but maybe being used in a slightly different way around Building Safety Act and things like that. But what role do you think BIM specifically will play in modern construction projects, and maybe what is the next big thing in BIM?
Well, I think ideally it shouldn't be a discussion at all, really. It should be people come together and say, are we going to follow this process? That's a standard process. Are we going to structure our information this way? And when we publish information and do change management, are we going to do it in the standard way? And everyone is, yeah, of course, that's how we do construction projects. So the dream behind BIM is it's the way that everybody accepts things get done. And people see BIM as that defined process and information management, not just, are we going to use Revit on this project, which a great tool, but that's not sort of BIM. So I think that's where we've got to get to. I think I'm not going to use the word BIM because, but where's information management digital going?
Yes.
And I think that's where you sort of take a step back from a single one project and you look across thousands of projects and use that information smartly so you can get more and more efficient on the next. And then almost that evolution of, you've got the fish, that's the perfect shape to speed through water, and that's happened over hundreds of thousands of years by getting chased by bigger fish, etc. I'm not sure if this analogy works, but you get construction projects getting better and better because you're using the data of what went well and what hasn't gone well in the past across thousands of projects, thousands of practices, and just becoming and learning from the past and getting better.
I think, like you said as well, it's not calling it BIM anymore. It's just around this whole information management practice. It's more so, isn't it? That's I think people have these sort of associations with BIM, like you said. So it'll be interesting to see how it sort of plays out, and especially around, things like digital twins too. How can that sort of contribute to helping create smarter cities and eventually, and as you guys mentioned, linking it with the whole operation piece to it, the whole of the built environment rather than just the sort of design part. So that's probably something that will come out this year.
Digital twin's another one where there's a little word at the top, and then everybody thinks it means something slightly different. And is this a digital twin? I know because it doesn't have this, but the principles behind digital twin, where you've got a digital model that is a twin of the building that's being operated, is definitely somewhere that the industry needs to get to.
Yeah, similar, like you said, kind of means different things to different people. And then, so again, based on digital, with your experience, what advice would you give to companies looking to integrate technology more effectively into their construction processes? Because I think, like you said, we're seeing strides being taken, but I think there are still some sort of, it's not as digital as it can be. Like you said, around sustainability, that's still quite manual. What advice could you give to companies looking to integrate technology more smartly?
Yeah, I'd probably suggest three things. I think you need buy-in from the top. So at least one person at sort of board level that recognizes this as a priority, because if you haven't got that, change is so hard in an organization. And then you need some good people that are there doing it, that are going to be the advocates, whether it's a team of 12 architects or it's a huge construction firm with 200 offices or what have you. You need to have the advocates that are at the bottom, and you need the support at sort of board level. And then the advocates need to sort of prove it works on a project and then share that knowledge across the organization. And I'd say the third thing is the right amount of training and consultancy to that accelerates it for you without you don't want to spend so much that you're wasting money, but you don't want to spend nothing and find that you're wasting money by not getting that acceleration. So support from the tops, real quality people, advocates that are going to push it through the organization, and then a little bit of external expertise to make it fly.
Excellent. How do you see MBS contributing to the evolution of the industry in the coming years? Any exciting projects coming up for you guys that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think if I maybe look across all three of our sort of product lines, if you like, on the specification side, we'd love it to extend through the project timeline and be useful for those sort of developer clients that are briefing the design team all the way through to the main contractors, that like the design manager that's making sure that what gets built is designed. So there's still some of our customers that maybe just use MBS for 2 or 3 days to write a tender spec, where I think if you develop it through the timeline all the way through to a record spec, there's much more value there. So I think getting the specification through the timeline by more sort of disciplines on the spec side. On the manufacturer product side, I think just keep on pushing on the quality information. So I think we'd like to model, we talk about built off-site and whole systems. We'd like to model systems as well as we model products. So what plasterboard very well, but what happens when it comes together to produce a full sort of integrated ceiling package or something?
Yeah.
And really push on with the sustainability side. And then I think on the Glenigan side, where you're looking across hundreds of thousands of projects in the UK, again, just work on efficiencies, innovation, things like AI, to pull more and more good information and put it at the user's fingertips. Just looking at the planning submissions that go into the local planning authority, there's some fantastic documents there, fantastic information, which are like 100-page PDF documents. And with this stuff you can pull out, we talked about earlier, for pulling that rich information out of unstructured data, and that sort of customized experience for the user. So yeah, we'll be sitting back with our feet up. There's loads and loads of exciting stuff, and that's just in the UK as part of the wider group. Can that be replicated around the world, in North America, Australasia, and Nordics, etc.?
And any more around the sort of building safety side and the MBS toolkit? Any future aspirations for that?
Yeah, so I think we will do functionality that sort of supports that digital plan of workflow. And I think the two bits that we really want to focus on there to help our customers with the Building Safety Act is, number one, to really clearly show what things have changed. So revisions, we just released a bit of functionality called advanced revisions. And that's so important. If something's been signed off and then the contractor says, can we use this insulation instead of this insulation? That's fine, but it's got to be to the same spec or higher and be documented and signed off. So we want to make sure that's a really tight process. And I think the second thing is having what we're calling, I'm not sure whether we call them flags or tags. Like tags and flags are the same thing. But to go through that really large specification and flag and tag the things that are critical to building safety, so you can more easily report on them and get little warnings if they change and things as well. And we think if we put both of those things in place, it'll really help our customers deliver against the requirements and the competencies in the Building Safety Act.
Actually, something just reminded me of there. In one of your LinkedIn posts, you state that MBS specification content is constantly maintained to keep it aligned with current standards and practices, and with obviously people needing to comply with the building safety standards. There's so much, it's like a growing list for these people to carry on and remain compliant with and remain competitive. Like, what else do you think is crucial for businesses to carry on with this ever-growing list of standards, specifications, and tech?
Yeah, well, we talked a lot about technology, but I think the fundamental reason people buy MBS is to stay up to date with the information they need to know. So back in 1973, when MBS was published, the standards, was it calcium? I've got a little picture of it somewhere. Calcium silicate bricks was there. That's called BS123. In 50 years, that's been revised, I don't know, 10 times. So it's a bit like painting a bridge. When you finish printing one end of the bridge, then the other end of the bridge needs painting again, sort of thing. And that whole MBS content set, the template clause, the guidance, the links to the standards, it's a continuous job to maintain that and look after it. So we've talked about technology a lot, but we've got about 25 technical authors that spend all day, every day, looking after our content and making sure that it's of a quality that our customers, so the customers can concentrate on delivering projects, not having to research the standards and the topics and the changes to building technologies, etc. So it's a huge part of our business. It's probably the fundamental part of our business, is making sure the content that we provide is of that high quality.
Well, I think that is all we have time for today. Any final comments for our listeners?
No, it's nearly 50 minutes and 45 minutes has flown by. So it's been a pleasure to talk. Cool.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Stephen.